Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is Tim May. Welcome to the Tim May podcast. I guess it's aptly named. Having a great time doing this podcast every week. Have somebody interesting on to kind of keep the juices flowing a little bit, like I had Jim Burrow, the father of Joe Burrow, on a week ago, a few days after his son lit up the state of Texas. And I'm very excited to have my next guest on. I will name him in a minute, but this is in reaction, etc., to what Ohio State did in its Big Ten opener on Saturday at Indiana, 51 to 10. It wasn't even that close, really, when you think about it. Just think if Josh Proctor had held on to that one interception, he might have taken that one back to the house, too. They'd had two long interception returns. But I digress. The offense got it going finally with Justin Fields, who started out slowly. The defense, I thought, was on all day. The reason Indiana was supposed to have any kind of chance in that game was because of its offense. Chase Young and company put a stranglehold on that offense from the get-go, and that was that. Ohio State 1-0 in the Big Ten as it starts defense of heading for possibly a third straight Big Ten title. But I'm going to talk about that more later in the show. What I'm going to talk about now is being an archaeologist, football archaeologist like I am. I like to dig into some of the layers that have come before, and I found this dinosaur as I was digging through last week. I was trying to figure out how could I best show how much football has changed in the last 30, 40 years. And I found this dinosaur known as a fullback. You folks remember him best known as Vaughn Broadnax. The people who work for him in the United States Postal Service over in Indianapolis know him as the boss. But anyway, Vaughn Broadnax, welcome to my show, man.
Tim, how are you doing today?
I'm doing very well, man. Last time I saw you, we were in a pregame celebratory bar situation in downtown Indianapolis the night before Ohio State played and won its second straight Big Ten championship last year. Do you remember that?
Oh, yeah. It was a great turnout. Everybody was hanging out, just having a good time, and saw you stand over the corner engaging your fans, and
Yeah.
I just stepped over and said, hey, Tim, how you doing?
I know, it's pretty funny. I'm going, man, here's Vaughn Broadnax, bigger than life, and there you were, man. Hey, I want to get into it, though, Vaughn. Nobody has a fullback anymore except the service academies. I mean, what's going on in football, Vaughn? Do you feel like a dinosaur?
Well, I guess they've gotten rid of the old Brontosaurus fullback and have tried to replace. But I will say this about the fullback. There are times when there has to be a fullback or a lead blocker in the backfield. And it's no more evident than when you're 4th and 1 and you can't get over a yard.
Yeah.
Because you've got either a quarterback and a single back, and first off, you're snapping the ball back 6 yards, and then you're handing it off. Well, that allows for defensive penetration. And if the running back doesn't have anybody to fend off or impede that penetration, he's going to get stopped. And I see it so many times. But then I see a team like Clemson. They bring in Trevor Lawrence to block in the backfield or even throw him a bone by handing off to him. Could you imagine B.B. Landers in the backfield?
Yeah, and you meant Dexter Lawrence, who would have been taking a handoff
from.
But no, I knew exactly what you meant.
Second.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know why every school in America doesn't do that. Ohio State, the way they rob Peter to pay Paul, they just use a tight end, and and they'll line him up. They won't even line him up as a fullback; they'll line him up as an H-back. Matter of fact, I've got a play coming up. I'm going to analyze after you're off the show today, showing exactly how Ohio State used that to great to great results on Saturday. A great example of how offensive have developed and evolved, and yet you've still got to have that lead blocker on occasion to clear the path. And
absolutely.
When did you take people back in your time machine a little bit? When did you determine that fullback? I mean, obviously your body kind of helped determine that, right? But when did you realize you could be happy playing fullback?
Well, it goes back a little longer, even before high school. I was in junior high, and and after 8th grade, I was, I said, well, I'm as fast as any of the running backs, but I was bigger than everybody else.
Yeah.
And
you had the X on your helmet. You're the guy that had the X on his helmet. Go ahead, though.
so fall practice arrives for my freshman year, and coaches are saying, okay, I want the wide receivers and quarterbacks over here. I want the running backs over here. I want the linemen over here. And so I ran to where the running backs go and said, Broadnax, where are you going?
Yeah.
I said, I'm going to play running back. Get your butt with the linemen. And
wow.
I said, well, if I can't play running back, I'm not going to, blah, blah. So after a little discussion, they allowed me to go play running back, and I haven't looked back since. And in high school, I was a big tailback, and, when Ohio State came knocking on my door, it was exclusively for fullback, and every other school was like, well, we want you as an athlete. We see you here. We see you there. But Coach Bruce saw me as his fullback.
Yeah. Do you miss seeing the I formation? Do you miss seeing the fullback on the field for Ohio State? I mean, what? I mean, it kind of disappeared it definitely disappeared when Urban Meyer came along, and they had Zach Harrison sitting there. They didn't know what to do with him, so they moved him to the linebacker.
Right. But I'll tell you, the fullback may be and maybe a dime. Well, it is dead, but it's a position where it fulfilled a purpose, and with the way offenses go, they transform over the years. I think you're starting to see a fullback come back a little bit because he's a blocker that you can't account for because he has to take on somebody, a linebacker or a lineman that comes through, and the tailback gets paid the big bucks to make that move after that block. So, I'm sad to see him go, but I think there's still unique situations, especially over the past 8 years, where you've seen our running game get stonewalled in these short situations, short yard situations, especially on the goal line.
Yeah,
and snapping a ball back to a quarterback allows that penetration and kind of stalemates the line, and then having a back go up in there with no blocker kind of impedes the situation. But I think having now seeing the quarterback under center, you can alleviate that 6 yard, 7 yard snap back to him and get the ball up there quicker in the line. But
Urban
I missed the fullback.
Urban Meyer was adamant about not putting the quarterback under center except in victory formation, and I even asked him about it several times in press conferences, and he would explain why it doesn't matter, and I'd be sitting there and I was, I'm just recalling all these events in my head over the last, I'm 65, but all these events in my head where I've seen where it does matter, and it even matters sometimes, if you give it to the tailback on short yardage as opposed to the fullback, I mean, there are all kinds of reasons of having that bang, bang play. And I just, back through history of Ohio State football, I mean, wow, I mean, it's just chock full of you big time guys that became famous being the fullbacks at Ohio State, not the least of which were you and like Pete Johnson. Pete Johnson was Woody Hayes' favorite weapon down at the goal line, and for good reason. When they get in robust, etc. But I wanted to ask you this: as you watched Ohio State the first couple of weeks now with this team, number one, you've seen, like I said, Justin Fields get under center a few times because Ryan Day's thinking like you're thinking. But number two, what has popped out to you about their offense so far? I don't know, that has you excited, being a big-time alum and a big-time party goer before those Big Ten championship games.
Well, there's a lot of things to be excited about, especially my forte is the running game. I mean, it looks like J.K. has really decided to run with some patience and some ferocity at the same time. Last year he tried to he rushed it, and it showed in his numbers. And I think this year he's being a little more patient, but once he sees that hole, he's taking it full steam ahead. And then you got young guys, Master Teague. Oh
Yeah.
my!
Yeah.
I
Yes.
was talking to Keith Byers yesterday. I said, Keith, he kind of reminds me of you. And so we've got a bright future. Even if J.K. decides to leave this year, we've got a bright future at the tailback position.
Hey, let me interrupt you now. Master Teague the third. This is what intrigues me about him. It's what I keep telling everybody. He reminds me of Keith, not just from a size standpoint, but remember Keith took those little choppy steps. You remember those?
Yeah, exactly.
His feet were always. I mean, he would take almost 3 steps to 5 yards, like every 6 yards, as opposed to a 2 every 5. You know what I mean? And
exactly.
it puts you in position to cut and stuff. And you're seeing the same things I am, Vaughn. I mean, I think you barely scratched the surface. You think with Master Teague the third at this point, don't you think?
Oh, exactly. And the more he gets acclimated to the college game and gets those carries and touches, I'm excited about seeing him in the future just because he falls forward. He doesn't make big cuts, but he makes the necessary cuts to make guys miss.
Right.
And that's what is really impressive about him. And I'm just excited to think about him for the next couple of years.
Yeah.
And then
go ahead.
Oh,
yeah.
And then you've got the receivers. I mean, you've got Chris Olave. I do not know how he got out of California with the teams on the West Coast.
Middle of the night. But go ahead.
Yeah. But he's exciting. You've got Garrett Wilson, who's going to be a star just from the flashes, the opportunities that he gets. But also you've got some improvement on Benjamin Victor.
Yeah.
He is catching the ball.
He looks like a pro.
Yeah. He's catching the ball where it was a 50-50 shot in previous years. He is becoming a sure-handed receiver. And then, of course, KJ Hill, the nephew of my cousin's wife.
Kevin Bacon, ladies and gentlemen. Say hello to Kevin Bacon, ladies and gentlemen. Yes, you're exactly right. Go ahead, though. I met an uncle of his I went to Alex Grinch's tackling clinic for youth football coaches like last year.
Okay.
Well, Alex Grinch, who was only here for 11 months, but now he's the Oklahoma defensive coordinator. But and the guy came up and introduced himself as KJ Hill's uncle. I go, wait a minute, you guys are from Little Rock. What's going on here? But go ahead, though. You're exactly right. And then of course Austin Mack has come back from that injury. I mean, he has that pro look about him too. I mean, all these guys. What stands out to me, and maybe you can rubber stamp this for me, is that I think this group, and I think a lot of it has to do with the coaching of Brian Hartline, but they not only have sure hands, and a couple of them can really run, but they also have mastered that ability to put their body between themselves and the defender. I mean, that's not you remember Chris Carter and what he could do in that regard. But that's not an easy thing to learn if it doesn't come naturally. And there are all kinds of reasons. Have you seen the same kind of improvement in that receiving corps since Brian Hartline's been around?
Well, exactly. And I mentioned Benjamin Victor. His concentration on the ball and his positioning on the defender is outstanding.
Yeah.
Austin Mack has always been here. He's always had good position, but there seems to be a level of concentration on the catching the ball.
Yeah.
And that's what really excites me. The guys are running crisp routes. Chris Olave, he confuses DBs.
You know what? He can run his own weave route without the help of a rub. You know what I mean? He rubs guys off just by looking at them. But go ahead, though.
Exactly. So, and I think, given time, Justin Fields will get the timing down on these guys.
Yeah.
He overthrew a couple passes, underthrew a couple passes, but one was a long touchdown or a long throw attempt to Olave, and I think Olave kind of twisted up and messed up the timing on that route.
Yes, he did. And then Victor, Victor, of course, got basically pass interfered with on when his deal down the middle. But go ahead though. I'm sorry.
Exactly. Yeah. So the future drive with the offense, I see the line is starting to come along. They started off slow the first couple of games, but it looks like they're starting to gel. Now it's against Indiana, but I think the guys are getting stronger and learning to work together.
Yeah, I mean, I keep reminding people, as big as those hog mollies are, as John Cooper called them, it's a dance troupe. It really is a dance
Absolutely.
troupe, and you got to learn how to dance. And there were great examples of them dancing pretty well with each other on Saturday at Indiana. Hey, real quick, I know you pay attention to this too, but what has jumped out at you defensively about this team compared to last year? Like I said, you saw a bunch of games last year. You were there at the Big Ten championship game, et cetera. But what just jumps out at you, just more than anything else?
Well, it seems like the guys are in better position, both on pass plays, running plays. The linebackers are better position. I like the combination of tough Borland and Browning.
Mm-hmm.
Seems to be Browning seems to complement tough a lot better in certain situations, and Malik Harrison and gosh,
Pete Werner,
uh,
yeah, the kid
Pete,
from Indianapolis.
Pete Word. You
Yeah,
know what, Pete? I saw Pete play safety at Cathedral High School,
yeah,
and one of my so I knew he had the athletic ability, but I didn't know he was going to be able to bulk up and play linebacker in the Big Ten. But he has that athletic ability to play well, and I think his detractors from last year are starting to recognize that too.
mm-hmm.
So he's playing well. Malik is playing well. Tough is playing well for what he's asked to do,
Yeah.
and he's not asked to do a lot of things that he can't do. And I loved it on his interception that we saw that he wasn't the fleetest of foot, but he kind of reminded me of a Marcus Merrick who wasn't fleet of foot, but
Exactly.
he was in the right place at the right time when he needed to be.
Yeah.
So if we can find that combination of putting these guys in the right positions for the right plays, this defense is looking strong. The DBs have improved. Damon Arnette, he even got called for a PI, which really wasn't a PI. Then the interception was just a thing of beauty.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Jeff Okudah, Wade, Fuller, White. It's a great combination of DBs.
Yeah, and don't forget Josh Proctor, man. That kid had
Oh.
a ball right in his hand. I mean, but I'm telling you, he's people who know about safeties and watch practice. We don't get to watch practice. Like the good old days. They
Right.
say he's the closest thing they've had to Malik Hooker since Malik Hooker left. You've seen
Yeah.
Malik Hooker play a little bit now. I know you probably go to Colts games, or at least you keep up with the Colts over there and in Indianapolis. But I mean, this kid has got a big time high ceiling, and we'll see where that goes. Hey, I want to run something by you real quick too. The Damon Arnette, for example, interception. Great example is last year. He might have been chasing the ball to the other side of the field like everybody else used to do last year. He stayed at home. The tight end released. They thought they were going to get a little cheapy, and not only is he there, but he makes the interception, and takes it back 96. Right?
Yeah, and that's all part of the new defense. It's more about discipline than design.
Yeah.
Keep these guys. Hey, I want you to focus on your responsibility instead of trying to confuse the offense. Focus on your responsibility.
Yeah.
And I think it's been so far it's been great. And they're taking advantage of all the possibilities. The fact that Cincinnati didn't score after having all those opportunities in the red zone just said this defense is going to make some things happen.
Yeah.
So
And,
so far so good.
Yeah. Hey, now let's real quick before we go here. Evan Spencer got ridiculous, and it was worthy. It was worthy of it. Ridiculous praise for that two-man block he put on Alabama on the Ezekiel Elliott 85-yard touchdown run. I don't know if you made it to that game or not. Way back when 2014 National College Football Playoff semifinal. But I remember there was a play by number 38. What was it? What was the setting? Was it on the 10 or 11 yard line you guys were on at Michigan, 1981. Art Schleister was the quarterback, and all of a sudden you guys are rolling right. I don't know if it was a run pass option. It looked like it was.
It was.
But you got into a guy on the edge, Art, who, well, he wasn't underrated. He was known as a really good runner coming out of high school, but he rarely really showed that ability more than he did on that one particular play, I think, through his whole 4 years. But he read your butt correctly, where you had the leverage there, and you end up blocking not one, not two, but three Michigan Wolverines as Art Schleicher scores the winning touchdown. And Do you remember that play like it happened 5 seconds ago, or did I just jog a memory for you?
Well, it's a good memory that is often relived and recounted. So,
Yeah.
but I remember that play to this day. Gosh, I was blocking Carlton Rose, may rest in peace, Michigan defender.
Yeah.
I had my grip. I had his, so I was basically directing him and pushing him.
Wait, let me interrupt people. There are legal ways to hold, correct? Right?
Exactly.
Exactly. Now go ahead.
It's all legal as long as the flag's not thrown.
Exactly.
But,
keep it inside, baby. Yeah.
But Carlton was about 215 at that, maybe 220. But I was able to push him away, and fortunately fell into a couple other defenders that opened the way for Art, because it was a play past 28, which was either you run around, Art runs to the right, and if a receiver is open and the defense comes up, you throw it to the receiver. Or if the defense stays back, you try to find a lane to run. And fortunately, we were able to get Art open so he could make it to the end zone, and ran into the corner of that end zone.
Yeah.
So
and then y'all
that was a great win.
Y'all slid into the snow there, the snow bank.
Oh yeah.
Now you need to help me with something though, because Earl Bruce told me a long time ago that Art actually called the play to the wrong side, that he wanted it to the other side. Is that correct? Do you remember a recap of that, where y'all are all patting each other on the back, and then they go, well, I mean, how do you argue against success, right? But go ahead.
Well, I will say this. Art didn't always call the play the coach called.
Seriously, how often did that happen? It did happen quite a bit, didn't it? I mean,
it happened a few times.
Yeah.
But more often than not, it was successful. So
yeah.
I guess.
But
when you look back at it.
Yeah. That was the beauty of the huddle, though. See, that was the beauty of the huddle. They don't huddle anymore. You watch this. I mean, the players all look over to the sideline. They all get their own individual, call, the receivers, et cetera, and then they run their play. And I just miss those huddle days, man. But, hey, real quick, though, what was it like? We're talking about Justin Fields right now. We all saw what Dwayne Haskins Jr. did last year. Just set the Big Ten record for passing. I mean, the greatest passing season in Big Ten history. Right on down the line, we saw what Troy Smith did. J.T. Barrett for those 4 years. Cardale Jones and his meteoric run through the Ohio State history books. But how good was Art Schlichter as you look back on it now?
Well, Art had a knack and ability to, make things happen, be it a short out or a long throw. Now,
yeah.
people try to revise history of talking about the tight spirals that Art threw, but if it was a tight spiral, it wasn't meant to be.
It was duck season most of the time, right? Duck season.
He had a lot of wobble in his pass, but he seemed to make things happen when it was necessary.
Yeah.
And be even on a run occasional option, he would make the right call more often than not. But great, I had good memories playing with Art. Art and I grew up in the same kind of area. 25, 30 miles from area, so I was aware of him in high school.
Yeah, wait a minute, let me interrupt. You're from Xenia, right? And he was from Washington, the Washington Courthouse area. Yeah. Right.
So we even competed in the high jump against each other my sophomore year and his senior year. So
wait a minute, time out. A guy wound up playing fullback at Ohio State, competed against Art Schlichter in the high jump. And what are we talking about there?
Well, high jump. I high jumped and long jumped in high school.
No, but what are we talking about height wise? What are we talking about? What did it come down to?
I was 6 foot 6'2".
Wow.
6'2" was my best. So So
my wife was a high jumper at Ohio State, by the way. She won. She was actually pretty extraordinary. She had the Big Ten or the Ohio State record for quite a while. But that was at 5'10" for women. But it's funny how 5'10" could probably still score points in college.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
But you and Art, like you said, y'all knew of each other, growing up, etc. Go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt you, Vaughn.
Well, that whole area is Wilmington. Gary Williams, I played against in high school and knew him well.
Yeah.
And they actually Gary was my host on my recruiting visit. So they kind of took me under their wing my freshman year. And so, it's sad to see Art go through the things that he's gone through, but, we all have our demons, and some we can handle and some we can't. So,
have you been in touch with him at all? Have you had any kind of I don't know, any conversations? I mean, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I will say not since the last episode, but over the years, because he spent time here in Indiana,
right?
His daughter lived in Carmel, and he would we'd talk about that, and there was one time I said, well, I need a babysitter,
Yeah.
But I haven't talked to him probably in at least 5 years.
Yeah.
So
he's had a tough road, man. One of my best friends is Jeff Snook, who wrote a book with him, but he stays in contact with him. He's in a pretty pretty tough federal prison in South Carolina, at least last time I heard, and he's dealing with some physical problems, obviously. I mean, I think people have heard of. He might be dealing with some Parkinson's and some things like that, and so it's been tough on him, obviously, but kind of, boy, you hate to say it, but he made his own bed. I mean, it's
right.
I mean, go ahead. I'm sorry.
It's unfortunate. I mean, he was truly the golden child.
Yes.
I mean, and he didn't come from a poor background. His father's farm and mother took care of him while he was at Ohio State, and but he liked to gamble. I mean, he was at every card game, and when the brothers would be shooting craps, he was up there, and so it was an interesting sight to see. But when I knew him, he didn't drink, he didn't do any drugs, and that was kind of our bond, because I didn't do either. And but just to see him fall to the ravages of a gambling addiction was bad.
Like the old saying goes, it wasn't the gambling that got him; it was paying for the gambling or trying to rob Peter to pay Paul, etc. That got him.
Exactly.
And that's what got him in ultimate trouble. And that's too bad, because that was. I watched a replay of that Michigan game like last year at one point, and it was just amazing. Some of the talent on the field that day on both sides of the ball, and just how raw that game was. I mean, it was like, it's just amazed me since I've been covering Ohio State football. Just that game takes it to another level, and I know you remember it that way too, right?
Oh yeah. I mean, you look at Anthony Carter, Butch Woolfolk, Lawrence Ricks, all those guys on Michigan, Steve Smith, quarterback, Mike Bourne.
Who knew he was going to have three? Who knew he was going to have three Buckeyes as his progeny? You know what I mean? I mean, Mike
Bourne. Mike Bourne and I go back to the North-South All-Star game, and I remember we took a weekend off and I drove him back to Columbus, and then picked him up, drove him back up to Canton where we were.
Yeah.
But just having a long talk with him, and kind of understood where he was coming from. Earl didn't recruit him at Ohio State, but he went to Michigan and proved he was definitely an all Big Ten type linebacker up there, because I hated blocking him. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
And
collisions.
But to imagine seeing him, his sons not only matriculating through Ohio State, but also giving Ohio State $1 million.
Oh yeah. From the trash business.
I said, everybody be like Mike.
Hey, as he says, the M he has now stands for Mike, not Michigan. No, I'm just joking. Hey, Vaughn, man, this has been a slice, man. I really appreciate it. You and I have run into each other a few times, and I've always wanted to have a conversation like this with you, man. And we may have one further down the road here, and you can tell may have one the week of the Big Ten championship game again. You can tell people where the hot spots are in downtown Indianapolis because, as I found out last year, you definitely know where they are, right?
Well, I try. Well, Tim, it's always a pleasure as well,
Yeah.
and hopefully we can do this again soon.
You got it, Vaughn. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, that was Vaughn Broadnax, former star fullback at Ohio State, works for the United States Postal Service now, and actually he's administrator over there in Indianapolis, has risen up through the ranks and does a hell of a job, and as you can tell, one of the nicest people you're ever going to run into, and he lives and breathes Ohio State football history. And you know what? And I'm going to come back in a minute, and I'm going to show you how they're still trying to figure out ways to duplicate a guy like Vaughn Broadnax even in these wide open spread offense days. We'll be right back. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. I told you, I promised you I'd show you how the modern day offense is a spread offense, even at Ohio State, is trying to figure out ways to make up for not having a Vaughn Broadnax, deciding to delete the fullback from even the lexicon of Ohio State football. But you're going to see on this play, maybe my favorite play of the whole day on Saturday of Ohio State's win, 51-10 win at Indiana. You're going to see why Ohio State still uses essence of fullback in its offense. And this play is Spencer backs it up a little bit. Just before this play started, Ohio State lined up. They had Master Teague on the left side of quarterback Justin Fields instead of the right side. Then they looked to the sidelines, and the coaches could see that evidently this play was ripe, or this Indiana defense was ripe to flip Master Teague over and run the play we're going to watch. And what's interesting about this is when Ohio State flipped Master Teague to the right side, Indiana's defense didn't change. The linebackers stayed where they were. They looked almost inverted stacked to a certain extent, etc. And as you can see, Ohio State has tight end Jeremy Ruckert right here. Let's go back to the start of this play. I'm going to give you the lineup here. You have Jeremy Ruckert sitting here. He's a tight end, but he's actually an H-back. You got Thayer Munford, Wyatt Davis, Josh Myers. See, that's not Wyatt Davis. That's Jonah Jackson. Josh Myers, Wyatt Davis, and Brandon Bowen. Here's Justin Fields. Now just watch how this play develops real slowly at the start. What you'll see is, and stop it right there, Spencer, this is actually 3 plays in one. It's a counter. It's a counter. It's a trap, and then it's an ISO in its purest form. And they run 3 different running plays. They amalgamated them into one play that goes 40 yards for a touchdown. Now this play, as it's already started, let's back it up again, Spencer, and move. You will see Thayer Munford care not about this man right here. That's key in this play. Okay, as the play starts, you see Thayer Munford. He fires out to the right. It looks like a zone. This looks like for all together, it looks like a zone to the right, zone read, a zone play to the right. And so the defensive line is reacting accordingly. So are the linebackers to begin with. As you'll see, stop right here. Wyatt Davis, though, is already pulled, and Josh Myers has reached for the nose tackle. He's trying to run a gambit. I mean, literally, Indiana was running a gambit into this play, and it worked out perfectly for Ohio State. Stop it right there. You'll see Jonah Jackson had no one to block. In zone rules, you pull to the area you're going to, the direction you're going to, you hit the first man you see. Well, the first man he sees is the linebacker crashing right here. So you'll see him crash here. Now you'll see Wyatt Davis has pulled. Boom, here's a trap on this defensive end, this unsuspecting long-haired defensive end. Watch this. Keep it going. Now look what's happened. Stop it right there. How about Jeremy Ruckert? He is cut up through the gap like Vaughn Broadnax used to do. He is isolated on this linebacker. That's his man. That's the man he had to get on this play, the isolation play. The handoff has already come to Master Teague, but Master Teague, as the play started, back it up again to the start there, Spencer. You'll see Master Teague take a dead step to the right and then come back to the left. They sell this play to the right big time before he comes back left on the counter. It's basically like a sprint draw more than anything else. Watch this. Now watch it all the way to fruition here. Watch Wyatt Davis with his block. Jeremy Ruckert gets enough of the linebacker. These two linebackers both spin out of their moves. They look like J.K. Dobbins there for a second. But Master Teague That's like a bright sun for a running back right there when you talk about run to daylight. The safety, this is a perfectly blocked play, ladies and gentlemen. The big promise that you make to any running back in an offense is we will get you to the second level. You've got to beat one man. Let's watch Master Teague beat the one man he's got to beat, this man here. And let it run. And there was no posse because Benjamin Victor had taken care of that man on the right, on the left, and I think it was KJ Hill on the right had taken care of his man, slowed him up enough that there was no chase, no posse. And of course, a defensive team, you want to be defending, not putting together a posse to chase down an offensive play. And but it's really cool, all the things that go on in a football game. But just watch the dance that this offensive line goes through. Watch Brandon Bowen. He blocks his man out of the play and ends up blocking two men. The guy chasing Jeremy Ruckert, he's been snookered, and Brandon Bowen gets both of them. It really doesn't get much better than that for an offensive line and for a running back. And it just shows you that even in modern-day football, they've figured out ways to keep the fullback involved. This Jeremy Ruckert is a tight end. He lined up as an H-back, but really on this play, he was a fullback. We'll be back in a moment where we'll talk about a few more things with Austin Ward coming out of that game on Saturday. Well, I want to thank the production crew here at Lettermen Row for letting me do that little I love talking football. I especially love watching videos of football and breaking them down, especially when a play goes as planned, and that one definitely did, right, Austin?
Yeah, you've got all these scene changes going in here. It's like you've taken control of headquarters down here. And
Spencer Holbrook and Will Crawl, I mean, they're two of the best key gaffers, whatever you want to call them, boom, Mike guys. I mean, they're the best in the business. But I wanted to ask you, I didn't get to go to that game Saturday. I'm doing the pregame show on 97.1 The Fan.
We missed you.
And they don't have the capability of me being in two places at once, which maybe we'll get to that. But that was a dominant performance by Ohio State in a situation where the quarterback wasn't sharp out of the gate, and I'm talking about Justin Fields, but the defense was sharp, has been sharp now for the number one defense for sure, has been sharp for 3 straight weeks now. This is not an aberration. This is real, the change to this defense.
You know that when a team has to dig into the bag of tricks, and Indiana tried to do it multiple times late in that first half and early in the second one to try and find something, you know that a traditional football is just not going to work against these guys. And maybe you look at it and say, oh, well, gosh, they're so aggressive, they might open themselves up to some of this misdirection. For the most part, they've been really sound on that. You get deep into that gadget, those plays are dangerous for a reason. They just missed maybe putting that lick on, turning it into a turnover. Who knows? But I think in the grander scheme of things, that tells you just how productive and successful this renovation has been for the Ohio State defense, because they are flying around at a level that you just did not see the last couple of years.
This is what's amazing. On Indiana's lone touchdown, Peyton Hendershot came off the line of scrimmage. I think Tough Borland probably had coverage responsibility for him, is the way it looked like. Yeah. But when they threw the ball backside to the wide receiver to throw the pass, they had flipped their whole formation before that play started. They went from strong to the right side to strong to the left side. Ohio State flipped accordingly. And as we well know, I mean, Ohio State has seen a steady diet, is going to continue to see a steady diet of wide screens. Mm-hmm. You're going to see that from Miami this week. Miami, that's one thing they think they might have going for them against Ohio State. I'm talking about University of Miami from Miami University from Oxford. You're going to see a steady diet of wide screens. They've got a freshman quarterback, et cetera. But the bottom line is Indiana tries that play, throw it outside, and Ohio State, they're lickety-split to get there. There were 5 guys chasing that play, which is basically just one man under half of your defense. Then all of a sudden, lo and behold, Peyton Hendershot just sort of ran by Tough Borland. That was a bad read on Tough Borland's part because Hendershot didn't even fake like he was going to block. He just took off. And you've got to know where your safety help was on that play. There was none. So I would lay that on Tough from the standpoint of not running with him. But what really was outstanding on that play, and it's outstanding in a moot way, Jeffrey Okuda came from the backside and still hit the guy at the one.
Made him pay for the touchdown.
Yes, made him pay for the touchdown. And so the run to the ball mentality is there. the awareness of is the ball thrown behind or ahead of the receiver in the flat behind the line of scrimmage. That's tough on anybody, right?
And that's a challenge. And to what you're talking about there with Tough Borland too, I think there's something to be said for the fact that Indiana had something they wanted to do. They thought this would work. They were probably waiting because the way Ohio State's rotating linebackers, well, you want Tough Borland to be on the field for that probably and getting into coverage as opposed to, say, Baron Browning or maybe Taraja Mitchell. Who knows? Somebody asked me about this the other day. Like, do you think teams will just try and do this more to get Borland in coverage? I mean, they should probably try to because if he is, Borland is going to be out there to stop the run. That's going to be his primary responsibility. For what people may or may not like about him, he's one of the best people Ohio State has to do that job. But
they snookered him on that play.
And that's going to happen. I mean, you might say, well, he's a veteran. He's played a bunch of football. That should never happen.
No.
Look, trick plays are trick plays for a reason.
Happens in the NFL, baby.
Yeah, that's if you've got the guts to call it and you dial it up and it works, you tip your hat.
But this is what's amazing on that play if you watch it. I mean, remember they had Tyreek Smith in for Chase Young on that play, and Tyreek Smith dropped into the zone like we've seen Chase Young do when you know a possible screen pass is coming. So they read screen. It looked like a screen all the way around, wide screen. Unfortunately, I think that is the play where Tyreek Smith hurt himself, whether or not he re-injured that core muscle injury or whether he hamstring or whatever it was. I mean, he turned around and ran on that play hard, but you didn't see him after that.
Yeah, Berm was down there on the sideline, Tim, and he said that they were looking pec shoulder area.
Oh, really?
So that would be a wave.
Yeah.
Now, that's just our analysis, and we have to read between the lines with some of these injuries
because
right
nobody
now
tells us anything
with Ryan
anymore.
Day. So, I mean, obviously, you and I and Berm are all going to be looking into that throughout the week ahead. I think it's probably a precautionary measure more than anything. He stayed on the sideline throughout the whole second half. But, again, that's a key issue because, if it is tied to the surgery he had in the summer, that's supposed to be – and you talked to Nick Bosa and the doctors about this. Once you fix it, you fix it.
Right.
But
you still have to let it recover, And so hopefully it's not that, because that could be end of season.
You wouldn't
basically.
want that to happen.
So we'll see what happens here. I mean, it's funny because not funny, ha-ha, but just funny that he was standing next to Jonathan Cooper most of the second half. And, man, you just look, there's two real stud defensive ends. And Ohio State's defense is still getting it done out there on the field with Tyler Friday, Jean Baptiste, and Zack Harrison. Boy, the cards are kind of like being dealt for Zack Harrison to see more and more of a role as this game goes along. I know you and Zach Boren.
I like that preview. Yeah.
Yeah, when you and Zach Boren, y'all broke down your play this week, some of your defensive stuff. So when Zack Harrison coming off the edge, I mean, remember this guy. That's his third college football game. He's only going to get better.
Yeah, I thought that was play, and I said this to Zach. I thought that was the first time that I looked at him and saw it, like the 5-star play showing up. You look at him run.
Yeah.
You look at him just standing there in pads. Few guys look as impressive physically, but that was a 5-star caliber pass rush move. That's Larry Johnson's impact showing up, and that's happening quickly for him. I really didn't think that it was reasonable to expect him to play a lot as a true freshman. Sometimes that happens with the Bosas and Youngs. They work them into the rotation. But there's so much more depth built up for Ohio State on the defensive line. I thought, that's not going to be necessary for him. But it's not like they're just doing it for fun. He is starting to flash and show that ability. And you roll John Baptiste, Tyler Friday, a healthy Tyreek Smith. I mean, they're already deep with who's working with Chase Young, and that's without having thrown Jonathan Cooper into the mix. And one of your favorite guys to talk to and cover right now, Vaughn Hamilton, right off the jump on Saturday against Indiana, blowing up play in the backfield.
That was Jim Stillwagon all over again. Jim Stillwagon always wanted to set the tone on the first play, et cetera. And Vaughn Hamilton, I'm telling you, he has come so far. But you're exactly right on Zack Harrison. It reminds me of that John Cooper line. If a dog will bite you, he'll bite you as a pup.
And he's doing it. And there were. I mean, let's be honest here. He had an incredibly high recruiting ranking. He was important as a 5-star, but there were people that were recruiting him that wondered about the motor because in high school it was not that consistent. He's obviously going to go out and be better than almost everybody physically that he plays against. And there were doubts.
I'll tell you what, there were times I watched him play, watched the highlights and stuff. There were times from high school that looked like he was almost bored a little bit.
I think he needed a challenge. Yeah. Larry Johnson's going
to look at the Sawyer kid now,
He's gonna be pretty bored over the next 2 years.
Well, look at the Sawyer kid though. They just moved him to quarterback over the weekend, and look what he did. Adam Pickerington. So when you've got a great player, you got to use as much of him as you can in high school, man, because he is definitely the difference. Real quick before we go, I got to watch the UC Miami game. Matter of fact, like an idiot, I record stuff and I watch football after football's over, And if Ohio State has trouble with Miami on Saturday, well, look out, because this is a team took a 10-0 spot on Cincinnati and just slowly but surely deteriorated into basically a non-competitive situation. They've got a freshman quarterback, Brett Gabbert, little baby brother, definite baby brother of Blaine Gabbert. He looked pretty good when he has time, but they've got some problems.
He's not going to have any time on Saturday. I think we all know that. It's interesting to me, when I saw that score, and I wasn't able to pay that close attention to Cincinnati, Miami, I wanted to see how the Bearcats would respond. I think that the way Ohio State's roster is built right now, you're going to see some of that, what it used to be known as like the Alabama effect.
The hangover effect,
The week after you play them, win, rarely, or lose, mostly, that you are just physically beat up and not ready. And I don't know, you saw it, so you can tell me, but, I thought that had to be the reason Cincinnati fell behind to Miami, because I think that's a good football team.
They were slow out of the gate offensively and defensively.
I still think that they are talented enough to win their league, get back in the top 25. What happened to them in the horseshoe is going to happen to a lot of teams.
Yeah.
That's not going to be unusual. So I think just to look ahead, and we'll talk about this more throughout the week, Tim, but you look at Miami, Ohio, the key for this one, Ohio State now knows it's going to be a primetime kickoff against Nebraska. It's on the road. That stadium is going to be live for that one. That's a game that they've circled for a long time to try and put themselves back on the map. They've already slipped up against Colorado. If they did it again against Ohio State with 2 losses before September's out, there will be a little bit of big red panic, whether that's fair or not for
big
Scott
red
Frost.
Panic. Yeah.
But that will happen. So the point is, Ryan Day, this is the week where it's a name-your-score game for Ohio State. I wonder how long he will want any of those starters to play. It might not – the final score might not be as impressive as Indiana, even though the talent disparity will be wider, I think. That'll be the key. This is the one where you should probably expect to see more Chris Chugginoff and potentially Gunnar Hoke, because Justin Fields should not need to do anything after halftime.
Yeah, and the bottom line is you never take anything for granted in college football, believe me. I mean, maybe Maryland did. But the bottom line is, this is the 2 things you want to do. 3 things you want to do. You want to make sure that they understand from the get-go that Ohio State's number 6 in the country for a reason.
Yep.
Number 2, you want to get your starters out of there as soon as possible, avoid injury. And number 3, like you said, there are a lot of young guys that still need to play on this football team, and especially at the quarterback position.
Josh Proctor.
And then Josh Proctor, to fulfill the promise that I laid out for him, several weeks ago, and what was it called? Hot to Trot? What was it called?
Bold Prediction.
Bold Predictions. Same thing.
We can name it Hot to Trot if you want.
He had one right in his hands on Saturday, man.
He had 2 and one in his face mask.
Yeah, one in his face mask. That doesn't count because it's hard to catch those in your face mask.
I asked him, Tim. It's funny because sometimes you go on the road and we missed you there. I say it again. It's just not the same without you around.
You mean my quips and –
Yeah, I mean – and breaking down football and having you the questions that come to your mind for post-game press conference.
Yeah.
But I digress.
Yeah.
But you down there, and the security is not the same on the road. Indiana does not have an army holding you back and keeping you from talking and pressing some flesh and doing
checking your pass every 5 seconds.
Doing some old-fashioned reporting.
Yeah.
And so Josh Proctor's heading to Carmen, Ohio. He sees me. He comes up. This wasn't obviously for publication, but on this show we're going to tell it like it is. And he said, "Man, I'm just sick." He can't. And he knew that those were the opportunities.
Oh yeah.
Not just that he could have scored on one or both of them, but he's trying to make a name for himself. He did that in week 1 with the interception. He wants to play more. And when you get those chances, they put him in. I think the first one was in the second quarter. Those were relatively significant reps that he's getting.
Yes.
And that would have changed the game. Those are the ones that he has to have. Ohio State still thinks that, he's right there in the mix with Isaiah Pryor. The week before, we saw Pryor in before him. That was the chance. He knows that. And so how do you take that and learn from it? Because he still hasn't got that many chances to play. But when it comes into you, you have a chance to score. You've got to take care of the first part first.
Yeah, but I'll tell you what, I challenge you to watch the video of the game. I mean, Josh Proctor ends up in the video shot at the end of almost every play.
Yeah.
When you do that, good things are going to happen.
Right.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for joining me on my Tim May podcast. I'm having a great time doing this show. I learn every week about what I should and shouldn't do. I'm telling you what, I might make it part and parcel to break down a play every week because I really enjoy doing that. The next time I do it, I'll be smoother about it.
It's all about reps.
But I'm telling you what, when I see a perfect play and a great view of a perfect play, you got to go with it. You got to show people that it's not just the guy with the ball in his hands. There are a lot of people doing a lot of work to make a football play work like that did. Like Newt Rockne said a long time ago, every play he ever designed was designed to score a touchdown. Well, baloney, I don't believe that, but that one right there, that should have gotten about 10 yards, and it got 40 and a touchdown.
You're not blocking a lot of QB sneaks
go.
to go 99 yards.
And keep your eye on Master Teague III. He is coming fast.
Beanie's going to break that down.
Yeah.
That's another drop for the week ahead.
There you go, man. And there's from one Beanie to the next, ladies and gentlemen. But I'll be back next week. We'll have another special guest, and thank you for joining me on the Tim May podcast.